The Rockpile Report, the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill, season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. We have Paul Wanecski of Hashtag Sports riding shotgun with us tonight in studio. I love it. Paul, first time in the studio. What do you think?
Your sign is immaculate. I love that sign. I love the sign.
Buffalo Brew Fab. Guys, anybody who's looking to get anything like this done, Buffalo Brew Fab. They had it turned around in about 2.5 weeks.
It's killer.
The cost was on par and kind of less than what I thought I was going to pay if I had ordered it offline.
Yeah.
And I'm supporting a local business. Why wouldn't you do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's such a killer sign. I love the setup. I like the fact that Chris is really far away, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, he used to not be facing me. This is just like a new thing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. He used to face the TV, and he loved when I'd get emotional about something to just drift behind that TV because Chris is uncomfortable with human emotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm fine with human emotion.
No, you're not.
When it's Jessica, I'm fine with it. When it's you, a grown man, crying about Marcel Darius, I'm not okay with that. I don't want to hear anything about it.
You can't spell potpourri without P-O-T.
God. So here's an interesting thing that happened, and listeners of this show will probably get a laugh at this, but I want Paul's reaction. So a week or so ago, I was on this podcast getting made fun of for not trusting crypto. I talked about how I'd heard too many horror stories about how guys would go plug in I got to plug in this digital photo frame, and it would just download malware to your computer that hijacked your crypto wallet and you got robbed. And it went straight to China. I've heard too many horror. Guess whose money can't get stolen that easily? Mine, because it's in a bank. And it's not even in a bank, it's digital, and someday they'll shut that off, and it'll be the movie The Road, and we'll all just have to kill each other to survive, which I am well prepared to do. Dial it back. But in any event, Chris was just emphatic that I'm being dumb and that crypto is the way to go. I'm old man yelling at clouds, and his love of crypto and his usage of crypto has bought cameras for the studio. It's done so many wonderful things. I get a text. In fact, I'll just read it to you. Chris.
It was one of the worst 15 minutes of my life. What was happening with cryptocurrency, I think it was yesterday.
Yesterday at 12:48 p.m., I got a text that just says, I got hacked on my crypto. I'm out.
Oh, my God.
Now, let's just stop hang on. Right there. Now, imagine if he's texting me at 12:45. How long has he been, he's been scrambling? Chris, when did you find out you got hacked? Approximately what time of day?
It was, right about then.
And your first thought was to text me?
I text Jessica and then I text you because there's a humor element where I have to text Drew about what's happening.
The misfortunate things that have happened to you.
I opened crypto up at 12:15 and doing really well. Doing really well. Even for when I say doing really well for the day, and we're already at noon. And then I went and took a shower, and then I finished that, opened up my phone, and it was your balance is zero. And I'm like, now I have had a couple of phone calls in the last 2 weeks, from people saying that they're with Coinbase, and you just hang up on them. And so I'm like, okay, I see my balance is zero. I'm full blown thinking, I don't know how I got hacked because I have Authenticator with my Coinbase account.
Yeah.
So you can't send money out of my Coinbase account without, especially to another crypto wallet, without putting in the Authenticator numbers, which I, for the life of me, can't figure out my password for that.
So you can't do anything. You can't do anything with your money.
I'm you can't do anything. I'm there's no way. There's no way somebody was that good at hacking that they can get through an authenticator.
They got my password. They got my password before I could remember what it was.
No,
it was going to be my first.
It turns out that Bitcoin was about to eclipse its previous all-time high, and Coinbase just crashed.
Shut it down. Yeah,
Coinbase just crashed.
Yeah,
for like 2 hours. So I'm like, oh God, saved.
So he texted me that at 12:48, and then followed it up with a text saying the phone number at Coinbase doesn't even work. So he tried to call them.
Yeah.
Were you seriously concerned about the legitimacy of cryptocurrency? Like you tried to call Coinbase to question the legitimacy of your cryptocurrency.
I just wanted to make sure because I was already knew that somebody had been trying to scam me.
Okay. So what I love is that Chris called to be like, "Hey, decentralized currency holder, is there a customer service line or a complaint desk?" And it's like, no, that's the beauty of actual currency.
Yeah. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? No, I joke. I have dabbled in cryptocurrency. It is too fast paced for me to be able to pay attention to and do anything with. You know,
you got in and got out.
I got in. I made some money on it, and I said, this is just simply too much. This is way too much attention. I'm paying way too much attention because the market moves too fast.
It's a Ponzi scheme. Here's what happens. Yeah. A bunch of people buy low.
Well, I got real money. I don't know about you. I put in real money. I got out more real money.
You buy and buy and buy and buy a coin, and then the value goes up because more people are buying it, and then a bunch of dickheads at the top go, all right now, and they pull a bunch of cash out, and it causes a run, and then it devalues. And now everybody else has to buy in so that the next wave of dickheads at the top can go, all right now, and they can grab a bag of cash and run away.
Time out. How is this any different than being a fan of any NFL team? It is no different than being a fan of being a Browns fan, you're a Steelers fan. There's no difference.
Paul, what did you dabble in?
What did I dabble in? I got into Ethereum real early.
That's what I'm in.
Yeah, I was in Ethereum real early, so much so that I forgot about it. And then I came back and it was doing very well. That's when I was like, oh, I happen to have money here.
What year was this?
Ooh, this was several years ago.
So this is like 16, 17?
This is probably 2018. I put money into it and then changed phones, forgot to re-download the app, and just forgot about it. And then in like 2000 and probably 2021, I was like, oh, I think I did this once, and I downloaded the app, and I had a wallet and had several $100s in it for my $40 investment. I was like, oh,
well, I'll take that and run because this seems like I stole something.
Right. Well, and then you start pocketing out that profit to other cryptocurrencies, and then it gets messy because you didn't even bring up the fact that people will launch coins that have actual no real basis,
and this is my point.
Steal your money.
Unregulated currency, baby. It's you get what you pay for. Now, what I love is that Chris,
I've more than doubled my money. So.
Chris texted me back to say that he got it. The funny thing, and what is kind of telling about me as a human being is that I already had 3 jokes written. I already had, before I even knew he got his money back, I had jokes. And then he got his money back and I was like, oh, you have no idea how funny this could have been. And then he goes, and I told him, I go, it's the age-old formula. Chris told me about it. I believe it's correct. Tragedy plus time equals comedy.
You just have to be patient here. Cryptocurrency is a time bomb. Yeah, you can't say it's not.
The jokes that I'm going to make at other people's expenses.
Just wait.
Now, as we sit down here tonight, guys, we've bored you enough with crypto talk and talk of how Chris. I just wish I had a live camera of Chris.
When he saw it,
and how he probably did that.
Do you know how weird it is to get out of the shower and start sweating? Weird.
And then he gets out of the shower, and then he's probably in a towel, pacing nervously.
Yeah.
Pacing while he's waiting for the Coinbase people to answer the phone. They ain't coming, Chris.
It is funny.
The Coinbase Twitter during that time, very hilarious.
I'm sure. All of this is hilarious. Now, as we're here tonight to talk about some defensive free agency, just some ideas, some thoughts we're going to spitball.
Who are all going to take their contracts in crypto.
Russell, you have to be agentless because no agent wants their part of this. They go, hey, whoa. I'm not getting paid in crypto because that's stupid. No. I want real dollars that I can go spend on my boat.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take 10% of this, 10% of air. Yeah, no thanks.
You have to be an agentless player for that to happen.
Yep, sure do.
Chris has made me a cocktail. It looks like a traditional old-fashioned.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is a mystery.
It smells like it. This is the mystery cocktail.
Drew never knows what's in the cocktail. He has to guess.
This seems normal. This seems like a normal old-fashioned. I'm just going to take a sip.
Uh-oh.
Gah! There's a bite to that I was not expecting. What is in that?
This was selected by Jessica. And when I say it was selected by Jessica, I didn't have any citrus, so I couldn't really dive deep. It is one of her favorite new cocktails.
I want to lick the carpet to get this out of my mouth. What is that?
It's called a Fancy Free. You're on point. This is the first time, Paul, ever he's been right on the nose with what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is an old-fashioned. You're just replacing the simple syrup for maraschino liqueur. So
taste that.
All right.
It's I'm having it as well. Same thing.
It's actually pretty good.
You think that's good?
It's pretty good.
When I sip that thing, it's like
Drew, this is the reason I don't drink much, man, because that's actually pretty good.
Okay. So when I sip that drink, I'm transported back into a time capsule where I used to read the Sunday paper.
Mm-hmm.
And in the funnies, right? The Sunday funnies?
Yeah.
There was a comic strip called Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
And Kathy used to go, "Ack!" And that's all I could see. It's just a thought balloon above my head that just says, "Ack!" Because that's what this tastes like. There's a bitterness. What is that? This maraschino liqueur can't be that bitter.
Cherry liqueur. It's Wild Turkey 101. Maraschino liqueur.
There's no body to it. There's no warmth to it. It's just
orange bitters, Angostura bitters, and 5 drippies of saline solution.
Here's what I hate about this cocktail. When you drink a bourbon drink, typically you feel warm. The warm and everything else.
Yeah.
This drink lives right on my tongue.
It's the Wild Turkey.
You sip it and it just sits right here in your mouth and you don't feel it. You don't acknowledge anything else other than just this thing.
See, I made it for Jessica maybe like a week ago and she loved it. So you've seen how much bourbon is out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't steered away from the Wild Turkey 101 making it.
Yeah.
Although she did yesterday say that she doesn't think she could handle the 101.
Yeah.
So she might need if you do a higher...
She weighs as much as Paul.
If you do a higher proof cocktail, it'll hold up to the other things that are in it. So I feel doing a higher proof bourbon, it'll hold up to the maraschino, where if I did a 90 proof, the maraschino might overpower
sweet.
it. Yeah, and it'll overpower
See,
it.
for me, to my palate, what you did was you removed all... Because I drink Wild 101. Now, a certain Air Force colonel we know has said that he prefers it to Old Tub. False. But what I will say is it's like whatever you put into this glass took all of the good things about the 101 away.
Basically, he's telling you that the 101 tastes like gasoline. That's basically what he's telling you.
You literally just boiled this down. It's almost like you cooked it down to what it is, just straight ethanol.
All right, well, chug it.
We'll chug it and do a podcast.
Listen.
Welcome to the Rock Pile Report, everybody.
It'll be an easy 30 minutes for me. That's fine. That's fine. There's a bucket over there. You'll be fine.
Oh, please, a bucket. What is this, amateur hour? No, you just stumble and crash like a real man. No, that whole real man thing, this alpha male thing that's going on, I could go off on a tangent. This is a whole other aside. We could talk about this later. But alpha male culture is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of. It is like the self-proclaimed alpha male culture. Be a man, drink this ethanol because you gotta be a man. It's like, nah, I'm not going to. I'm a dude. I'm not a man.
Yeah, I have the power to say no.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I have a reasonable power to say no. You know what I can't say no to? Your sliders at that tailgate were delicious. Delicious. I just want to let you know that.
There we go, guys.
Like, I had a great time. I never go to football games. I don't go because there's a lot to it. The playoff game. I went to the Chiefs game. So, tailgate, super fun, right? Mm-hmm. Really respect what you do. You got a whole culture there. It was super fun.
It's not hashtag culture.
Yeah, it's not hashtag culture.
It's not uptight like that.
I'm happy you had fun, man.
Yeah.
I was happy to see you guys. I'm happy you, Ryan, Mario came. It's really sad Mario couldn't be here tonight. Oh, wait, we didn't invite him.
Sure didn't.
It's realistically because, Chris, if you look at the layout of the studio, I mean, Mario wouldn't fit in here.
I mean, he has before.
Then how'd that go?
Not good.
Mario, we love you. You're just too big. And
we are set up for 4 microphones.
He also,
over there.
He also looks like John Wick's brother. If his brother was like,
had AIDS.
I'm just here into a. If his brother was like, yeah, I'm the one who went into accounting. Whew. Yeah, I learned the numbers instead of how to shoot people. Whew. Yeah, it gets hot. It gets a little spicy over here. Defensive free agency concepts. Just philosophies, player of interest. We're going to talk about a lot of things here. I first want to have, like I said, Chris, we talked about it in the previous podcast. Everybody has done these shows. I don't like to glom on to what everybody else is doing. It has to be natural, and it has to be reasonable, and it has to be how you actually feel.
It's Combine Week. Paul?
Paul,
should we do a 7-round mock?
Oh, my God, no. No.
If you guys start talking about mock drafts, this whole podcast is going to turn into the movie Falling Down because, like Michael Douglas, I'm going to stand up and yell, I'm going home, and I'm going to get a rocket launcher and blow a hole through your ceiling.
I encourage people to do mock drafts. I do. They're fun, right? You can go in and trade picks and like.
Whoa, hang on. You could
fun.
Or if you wanted to dress them up and make it seem like it's a real thing, you could call it a thought exercise.
Your quotation marks when you do that. But, you know, I encourage people, go have fun. Go get involved, right? It's a fun time. Just stop posting them on social media.
Oh, because I don't care.
Yeah, no.
It's
without context, right? Because you're like, look at all the players I got. Well, I don't know who was on the board at the time you made those selections.
Posting a mock draft on social media is akin to somebody posting videos of fireworks on Facebook. Nobody gives a shit, and nobody's watching that. Mm-hmm. We're skimming right past.
Yeah, I'm going to judge your mock draft. Like, I'm going to judge it.
Wait, what player did we pick apropos of nothing with no context?
Exactly. That's what I mean. You know, like it's anyway.
The Bills are going to have a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the football. And I know we just got done recording a show where we talked a lot about all the dead cap we hope they eat. Realistically, if they decide to spend a little bit, they're going to have to spend a little coin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The draft class is only going to cost about $3,500 if they pick every pick.
Mm-hmm.
So if they make the moves that are reasonable, if they extend the players that they want to extend, or restructure the contracts of guys who realistically are not leaving, regardless of what the media or what the fan base may want, they're going to have the money to make some moves. There's going to be some wiggle room. And so in that way, it's always worth talking about free agency. With that said, I think it's also worth looking at the existing roster because we've got some things going on here that we haven't had for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I want to start with linebacker. We've had conversations for a very long time about how the Bills can fix linebacker, going back to when Preston Brown, I remember fighting with you about Preston Brown.
Yeah. I remember that.
Preston Brown. And now we live in a world where the Bills have a solid and cap-friendly linebacker group. Mm-hmm. They do. I mean, this time last year, the linebacker group, it was a panic spot for everybody in our fan base. Myself included. Mm-hmm. I was kind of being an asshole. But Chris, we scoffed. Remember when Brandon Beane said that Balin Spector and Terrell Dodson were in play for a starting linebacker job?
Yeah.
And yet, you look at this, our first round pick was going to leave. Mm-hmm. It was anarchy. Everyone's like, well, who's going to be the middle linebacker? Mm-hmm. Chris, did or did not Brandon Beane make us look pretty stupid by trusting the roster?
Yeah, I can't believe the play of our linebacker position, especially after we lost Milano for the year. It was Bean can do some work.
Milano is an all-pro who just catches just really untimely injuries. Mm-hmm. Like he's never available for Chiefs games. He's never available for Chiefs games. Terrell Bernard. Mm-hmm. What a like from zero to hero.
The thought of the two of them playing next to each other all year is mouth-watering.
And then you've got a Balin Spector who flashed a little bit when he had to come in. Mm-hmm. Great special teams contributor. Mm-hmm. Dorian Williams showed a little bit here and there when he was allowed to see the field. Mm-hmm. That like, hey, I understand run fits. I understand where to be, how to attack a lane, how to come downhill.
Right.
I'm fast.
He was drafted to beat that line of scrimmage offense that the Chiefs run.
Yes.
Right? Like that was why he was drafted. People say he was a reach. That skill set doesn't exist in a lot of linebackers later. So they took him because they said, listen, this is going to beat Miami. This is going to beat the Chiefs. We're going to see them 5 to 6 times this year.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're going to see the Chiefs. We're going to see Miami twice. We could see both of them in the playoffs. Right? This type of linebacker will fix a lot of problems for us because he'll laterally move and be able to keep up from a speed perspective with teams that move laterally. And then you look at San Francisco. San Francisco does a lot of the same things, right? The teams at the top of the pecking order at the time that you drafted him, the move made a lot of sense. I know they caught a lot of smoke for it, but from a profile perspective, it made a lot of sense.
Well, I don't think they caught as much smoke as they deserve, not for drafting him, but them for not giving him a chance.
Right. Especially with the injuries, right?
When you
tons
have
of opportunity.
Injuries, and then you have to have a guy who carries with a tight end, and you go, hey, you know who I trust more than Dorian Williams is AJ Klein.
Yeah.
But realistically, for the first time in years, the Bills have zero concerns at linebacker. Mm-hmm. And maybe they bring in a camp body or two, but realistically, our roster, barring injury, is right here on paper already. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful place to live. How could you not love what we have at linebacker? We're set. I don't need to see anything else. Don't you dare draft one. And I love where your face is because you're already watching the combine thinking about, oh man, we could add one more.
I think your linebacker play was so effective because your defensive tackle position did the dirty job all year.
Sure.
And you've got 2 of them on the roster right now. But to me, that's a McDermott thing, right? McDermott's defense loves those free linebackers. You create that space by having really strong vacuum-style defensive tackles that suck resources up. They stop those offensive linemen from getting to the second level. I'm not going to trust Matt Milano on a pulling guard, right?
No.
But you can't trust Terrell Bernard on that either,
they're all
right?
undersized.
Exactly.
But they make plays in spades.
Right. But you have to protect them with defensive tackles.
So then that almost kind of tips your hand in the draft of like, where should we sink our resources? I don't know. Maybe instead of chasing a dozen defensive tackles, maybe it's worth drafting a few. Just a few.
I don't know, man. If you look at the Bills' draft history for defensive tackles, there's not a lot of history there.
No. You know how I know that? Because just in order to make a point during our last podcast about a 1,000-yard wide receiver, I downloaded the entire Bills defensive draft history, and I exported it into Excel,
and you just sorted, and you saw Harrison Phillips and Ed Oliver, and that was like the list.
Adolphus Washington, Marcel Darius, Michael Jasper.
Adolphus Washington almost doesn't even count as a defensive tackle.
Hey, whoa. He defended that water park when he pulled a gun out in the parking lot.
He sure did.
When he had a gun in a water park parking lot. Hey, he did the job, right? Nobody got hurt that day.
Takes water safety very seriously.
He takes the safety very seriously. Marcel Darius, when you look at the picks before that, Chris, I'm going to read you some names. I want to know if you remember them.
I already know that you don't know. You thought Eric Flowers was a tackle.
No. Here we go. Terrell Troop.
Yeah, I definitely remember Terrell Troop because Terrell Troop was the guy drafted prior to Rob Gronkowski.
Yes.
Yep.
John McCargo.
John McCargo got traded to the Colts and failed his physical. And then he's still a Bill because he failed his physical.
Kyle Williams.
Yeah.
5th round.
Yep.
So I'm going to highlight that one. Tim Anderson. Lavule Sape.
Who cares?
Justin Bannon.
I remember Justin Bannon.
Ron Edwards. Tyrone Robertson. Leif Larson. John Perella.
Yeah, we've hit the obscure zone.
We're in 1993. Like this is like we went from Kyle Williams to John Perella from 2006 to 93 in 5 picks.
Yeah.
We don't draft them and we don't do well when we do.
As an organization, true, right? And specifically, you've only drafted Ed Oliver and who is the other one that I had mentioned? You've only really drafted Ed Oliver and Harrison Phillips, right? Because Phillips was drafted the same year you drafted Allen and Tremaine.
Here's what's awesome. If you think about the 90s dynasty, the defensive tackles we had on those teams, here are the guys we drafted. Pat Raybold, Pete Kirkendall, Tietfeller, Gernest Brown. Gernest.
No.
Not Ernest, but Gernest Brown in 1983. Tony Suber in 1982. None of these guys made an impact when we were making a run. So what the fuck were we doing at defensive tackle?
I'm pretty confident that...
Have we always just been free agent defensive tackle team?
Apparently.
Holy shit.
Apparently.
What is happening? Either way, the history is not great, but realistically, they're going to need help. But this linebacker core is set if you can get them protection in front of them.
100% agree. Yep.
At defensive back, and this is where I think our first point of real contention or at least fun conversation might come into. Cornerback is a position where the Bills might have too many options. For the first time in a long time. Now, you spent time telling us about how Dane Jackson really doesn't have a place in the market.
Right.
And he'll be back if the Bills want him to be back. You factor in he's there with a group of Benford, who is really coming into his own as a late-round pick, but earned a starting job over a first-round pick and hasn't looked back. He would be a CB2 on a lot of teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
Elam has all this athletic upside and just maybe it's between the ears. Maybe it's just he doesn't have the right coach. I don't know. Maybe a new voice in that room this year makes a difference.
I mean,
but maybe it's the Rasul Douglas thing because everyone looks at Douglas and goes, "Oh, he was great this year." He's been on 5 teams.
Yeah, he's been bad for a lot of organizations.
Teams.
He's been bad for. I mean, not that he was like misunderstood.
No, he was bad.
He was bad,
and then he figured it out.
Yeah.
So the idea that you can't learn how to play the same way Nnamdi Asomugha went from being amazing to being
one of the
crap.
best corners that people were talking about being a top 20 corner in the history of the game. And then he leaves. Oh, he was in Oakland, right?
Yeah.
Leaves Oakland, and oh my God, his career was over. I think 2 years after that, like
he was unrosterable.
Yeah,
it's such a nuanced and mental position that the fact that this guy made it through all of that, if you can instill, if Rasul Douglas might be the best coach for Kyle Elam that the Bills have,
right?
He just needs to spend more time with Douglas.
Maybe.
Like, those two guys need to just talk more about, hey, dude, this is how you get by.
I think the quarterback conversation is so fascinating to me when it comes to Buffalo because, that was, you were able to trust your cornerback position coaches to just turn everybody into starters, right?
Yep.
You look at Levi Wallace, undrafted, right?
Yep.
You can name a bunch of guys who were undrafted players or guys that you picked really late that ended up working out for you. Dane Jackson obviously being one of them. But then you have times where you look at like Jaquan Johnson. You held on to Jaquan Johnson since 2019 and you needed him to step up, and it was a bad investment. But you always were betting that, don't worry, we'll just find another corner. It's not hard. We've seen Phillip Gaines. Do you remember Phillip Gaines? Yeah.
Wait, the elusive Phillip Gaines, because he literally ran away from opposing wide receivers.
Right. But the fact of the matter was they don't care who plays corner two for them. They don't care.
No.
It doesn't matter to them.
They have a
find a
strong
way to figure it out.
CB1. It all makes sense.
Right. And you saw what it looked like when they didn't have that, right?
Yes. And so I guess I look at this and I go, you have Elam, you have Benford. You kind of know what you have with everybody else. I mean, Teron Johnson, best slot corner in the NFL. Arguably, I guess. Who else would you put up with him?
Slot corner is a weird position for me, right? Because the NFL is slowly figuring out that slot receivers don't have to be 5'8".
Nope.
Right? Like sometimes the bigger the
guys.
sometimes the bigger the guy, the better. And that's what makes Teron Johnson sometimes a bad matchup, right? Because you go against a team that's playing a wide receiver in the slot that's 6'2", like it's very possible Gabe Davis turns into a slot receiver with his next team. Like it's very possible.
Paul, tell us about Teron Johnson's combine.
Oh, Teron Johnson called him Jughead at #sports. You know why we called him Jughead?
Why?
Because at the combine, he went to run a drill where you run across the 50-yard line and you catch a pass on each side as a defensive back, right? And you do this. I think they catch 4 passes on each side, so 8 or 10 passes total. He
started on the wrong side.
He went to run, looked this way, ball fucking doinked him right in the face. Right in the face.
No.
So we called him Jughead because he looked the wrong way. Going right in the dome.
See, the combine sucks.
But that's Brandon Beane going, yes.
Yeah, Brandon
We're going to get our
like,
guy.
Brandon Beane goes, oh my God, thank you. Yes, because everyone's going to see this and go, what an idiot. We're not drafting that loser.
What? There's an interesting point there. So there is on the Embedded series, if you go back and really watch the Embedded series, Gabe Davis.
He flat out is rooting against his 40.
Yeah, he's hoping Gabe Davis just falls over himself in the 40 because he's like, listen, I got to get this. We want this guy to slide.
I want this guy. I need him to slide, and I hope he doesn't run that fast.
Right, exactly.
So we have this guy, Teron Johnson. We have Douglas. Great value add.
Mm-hmm.
We have him for money that I'd like to reduce if we can extend him, because I think he has a place here in Buffalo.
I agree. I agree.
And then you look at Trey White. And now you look at it and go, well, what are we going to do with that guy? He's a wild card. If you throw him into the mix, you're brimming with talent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just for the sake of a free agency conversation, I'm not going to debate whether he should be cut, released, the cap implications. All I know is I have a lot of other conversations about defensive backs that have been kicking around inside my head that need to get out. And Jordan Poyer is probably the biggest.
Yeah.
Can we have the conversation about Jordan Poyer where everyone goes, listen, Chris, age is a hell of a thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Just ask my back.
Yeah, well, no. And that's exactly it. So I have to go to a chiropractor. But also, I've been, for all the time I've been going on with this stuff with my hand and then just different stuff health-wise, I haven't worked out consistently in almost 6 months. I've been doing it like a day here, a day there. I get into the gym. I haven't been inside a gym before today in at least a month and a half, maybe 2.
What machine do they have there that works on your teeth?
It's all bad, folks. It's all detritus. Here's the crazy thing. I get in there and I'm working out and I'm going, God, this feels good. I'm in it. I'm doing well. I'm doing I can't bench press anymore because my shoulders are so bad. I can't bench press with a bar. I have to do the plate loaded machines. And so I'm doing the decline and I'm doing the incline. And then like I get to flies and I go, okay, cool. I can do the straight forward, just like the fly machine. But then if I try to do a cable fly, there's all of a sudden I get this like tinge in my left shoulder. And I go, all right, well, that's not great.
Where in the shoulder?
It's literally the back half.
Backside.
And here's the worst part. So I know I have a bad labrum in this shoulder, but I have rotator cuff damage in this one that you can feel it grind.
Oh,
when I turn
that's
it.
nice.
Yeah, that's nice. So I'm working out, and halfway through my workout, it's like I start doing things and I just feel this like pain, like when you get an injection and it's like there's a sting but a burn. It's every time I'm trying to press and it's like, okay, well, I aggravated that. So I guess I got to get out of here. I guess I have to stop this for the day. I'll go do the stair machine for 35 minutes and get the fuck out of here. Because I expected to be able to work out for an hour and it turns out I lifted for about 20 minutes. Now, it's rapid fire and it's max weight and it's doing all these things, but it's not what I used to be able to do. And I'm upset about it and I'm driving home and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder how Jordan Poyer feels today.
Looks like RoboCop out there.
Yeah, this is it. Like in 2017, the team signs a safety who literally got his spleen exploded because he got tackled so violently. And then he goes on to be a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro. He goes on to be a culture carrier for our franchise. And it's not lost on me. Right? Like we have certain Scandinavian listeners who have told me about this dynamic of culture carriers over the year. Every franchise has to have somebody who embodies what the will of the head coach. And they embody it. I think Jordan Poyer is the guy. He is Sean McDermott on the field. Yeah. He's the guy Sean McDermott would have been if he could have been a little taller and a little more athletic and not a ginger and out there running around playing football.
Sure.
And that's the love affair between these two players.
Right.
It's why he was here last year. Against all conventional wisdom that said you shouldn't have brought him back. Not at that number, not at...
Well, you had already signed Taylor Rapp. Like, the move to bring him back didn't make a ton of sense to me. But, like, they were struggling last year at safety, and they never really did anything to try to address that. Like, they turned Cam Lewis into a safety. He gives up that reception to Justin Jefferson because he's doing corner things when he's playing safety. Like, they tried to do everything with Cam. Like, it was a mixed bag of crazy, and they didn't do anything to address it besides draft Alex Austin, who they ultimately released anyway, and is now a restricted free agent with the Patriots.
Are you watching safeties now at the Combine?
I watch everything, my friend. I watch everything. But safety is a position that Buffalo has consistently drafted, albeit late, and they have since McDermott got here. Like, it's a position that they're always adding somebody to.
He keeps thinking he can steal a guy.
Always.
I wonder if there will ever be a year where he just goes, hey, I need talent. Let me get into round 2 and just go pick a safety.
Well, so I'm gonna say something that I would expect Mario to say to you. Okay?
Is it about his hairline?
Is it her? Mario, I love you.
Oh my gosh.
It's getting rough in here tonight.
Woo. So Mario is going to say, when you have a player like Tre'Davious White at age 29, and you've had the lower body injuries that he's had, right? An Achilles, an ACL. At some point, that player stops going backwards.
Yep.
Right? Like, that's the skill of a corner, is to be able to flip your hips and leverage your lower body. And at some point, that player has to stop going backwards because their body's telling them they shouldn't anymore. Right? Like, remember when Mario Williams, back with the Texans, they went from a 4-3 to a 3-4 and made him a strong outside linebacker, blows his ACL. Right? Yep. Because for years, homeboy was just going forward. And they said, hey, guess what? We got to add a gear to your transmission. You're going to have to cover people sometimes.
Yeah.
And blows his ACL, right? There's a point where you have to just accept the fact that the player that you want isn't physically capable of doing what you want anymore. And Trey's at that point. So the thought of you let Poyer go you have Trey. He's expensive. You're going to save about $7 million if you cut him. But is it almost worth it to say, how about we just have you run forward now? How about you just play safe?
But I don't think he can because he doesn't tackle. He's never played a physical game.
Yeah.
He isn't.
Well,
he's not
say that to Champ Bailey. Champ Bailey couldn't tackle.
Sure.
He couldn't tackle my grandmother. Champ Bailey was bad at tackling football, tackling other opposing players. He was bad.
And so now I look at this conversation of putting Trey White at safety. I don't buy it. I just look at Poyer and I go, look, you're leaving us in a hole because you were here last year. They gave you a roster spot. And you, like, it's the benefit of sitting where we sit. We get the all 22 angle all game long.
Yep.
I watched Micah Hyde come from the opposite hash in a playoff game to pick off Mac Jones.
You mean free agent Micah Hyde?
Yeah. I watched that happen. And then I watched Jordan Poyer just seem lost on most plays. Not because he's not recognizing it, but because he physically cannot keep up with the speed of play.
Yeah.
You have no choice but to move on from this guy. And if that's not enough, the numbers back up what my eyes are telling
100%.
me. 0 interceptions this season. Okay. Wasn't aggressive, driving on balls inside the box, even though that's been his hallmark. That's where he made his bones. He allowed 1 touchdown in coverage, okay, which is good, but he also played more snaps in the box than he did deep. Almost like they knew, like, hey,
I wonder why.
Oh, we can't put him out there. He had one of the worst coverage snaps per reception allowed on the entire roster. That's ugly. And then late in the season, when we needed him to, like, hey, this is a veteran. This is a guy. He's supposed to be able to dig deep and find that extra gear for the playoffs. He had his worst games. Week 17 until we lost against Kansas City, 10 of 12. And then more than 3 games, right? Like, more than 3 games, 80 yards allowed. 10 of 12. Like, every time you're targeted, you just allow a reception. It's ugly business.
There's a point where you actually had to question, DeMar Hamlin died last year. Is he better than Jordan Poyer right now? DeMar Hamlin was not a bad safety.
No.
He was I would say he was an average NFL safety. I don't want to...
He misses tackles.
Yeah. Yep.
Sure.
Sure. An average NFL safety, right? And there were times where Poyer was a bad matchup for you. He was out there and there was just no way it was going to turn out positively for you. So, you got to take your medicine, but that's where McDermott, I think, fails as a coach because he allows his players to fail him and he sets them up in situations where the outcome is 40% of the time you're likely going to fail me.
He goes, hey, brother, I trust you. Let's go out there and let's beat the odds and have a great performance. And it doesn't end like a movie.
Right.
It ends like reality, which is where you fall on your face.
Right.
And so I see all the discourse about keeping him, restructuring his contract, maybe, well, if we get him to reduce his number and we do this and that, I'd argue we'd be worse off at a worse number with him out there as our starting safety.
Yeah. The Bills, I mean, to get back on Hamlin, right? Hamlin was talking about how he'd love to finish his career with the Steelers. Like, he's ready to go. He's got another year on his deal, but he's ready to go. I don't blame him, He
hasn't been given the shot.
He was a healthy scratch the entire season because the organization's afraid to put out a guy on the field to have another traumatic incident. I will be honest with you. I don't blame them for that. But if that's really the case, you shouldn't have rostered him in the first place.
No,
you used him like a decoration, right? Like this morale decoration.
Yeah,
and you can't do that. Yeah,
it's ugly.
Yeah,
and so this might be the way to smooth that over a little bit, and go, listen, we're going to give the job to DeMar. Why? Because he's here.
He made it through the season.
He's here.
Yeah. And if you do draft somebody, you're likely not drafting a safety in the second round, right? Safeties typically, unless they're one of the top 3 guys in the draft class, they're typically available in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round.
And then you've got the defensive line.
Yeah.
Which we've already talked about. Defensive tackle. We only have 2. Mm-hmm. We only have 2 defensive tackles under contract.
Yep.
Defensive end is pretty much at this point, it's Greg Rousseau, it's Von Miller, and it's who?
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe I can say this, but this team's going to miss AJ Epinesa. And what universe do I live in where those words came out of my mouth and
remember
they matter?
Drew's world?
Do you remember when I ruined your live stream? Ruined.
Yeah.
Ruined the hashtag sports live stream of the draft.
Yeah.
Because we drafted AJ Epinesa instead of J.K. Dobbins.
Yep.
Now, it turns out neither matters, but it might.
Well, I mean, I think
one of them is still in the NFL and ascending, and one of them might be done.
Yeah. So I think we have to talk about Bean's approach in theory to drafting rounds 1 through 3, right? So when Bean goes into a draft, he's only targeting 4 positions, right? And they're the 4 positions you can't afford in free agency. And he's admitted to this, right? You draft, if you don't need a quarterback, okay, that's one. Don't have to worry about that anymore, right? Check that off. He drafts defensive ends because that's a premium, and he refers to them as premium positions. You can't afford them.
You can't buy a pass rusher in free agency
and be a competitive team most of the time. Well, there are exceptions.
Well, you can do it if you've set your cap.
If you've already got, you're right.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you've already got a good team, you can add a piece, right? Yeah. But defensive ends, premium positions, corner. Premium position, really hard to go out into the free agent market and get a reasonable corner.
Yep.
Just a reminder, Levi Wallace will be a free agent this season. Just pointing that out.
If he comes back, it'll be
on the revenge tour. Levi Wallace on the revenge tour.
I met him in an airport.
Tower over Levi Wallace.
As me and my wife were going to a cruise and we get to the Buffalo airport, I'm behind a similarly heighted guy, skinny.
Yeah.
He's like you.
I know.
He weighs about $160, $170. But he's got an Alabama elephant on the back of his backpack.
Yeah,
and I look at her, I look at my wife and I go, it's Levi Wallace in front of me. And she goes, what? And I go, no, it's Levi Wallace. I'm going to say hi to him. And she goes, well, that's weird. And so what I did was we're going through security, and he's right in front of me the whole way, and we're going, and we
you know what you do? You know what you do? Hey, you know what you do with this? You go shoulder to shoulder with him and go, hey, let me see how long your arms are.
We get all of our stuff out of our buckets. He's headed down the concourse next to me. I'm walking, he's walking, and I look at him and I go, hey, roll tide. And I gotta put he bumps fists. He goes, yeah, roll tide. And I go, hell yeah. And then we start talking. And my wife's like, oh, Jesus. Here we go. He got him. Now they're having a conversation. I had like a 5-minute conversation with Levi Wallace. It was awesome. It was cool. Mm-hmm. I asked him some questions. He gave me some answers. And I was like, I appreciate you. I appreciate you for giving me your honest opinion.
Mm-hmm. It's, I think it's one of those circumstances, though, where, again, the positions that you need to address early in the draft are the positions you can't afford.
Yes.
Can't afford a wide receiver in the wide receiver group, right? I would love to add T. Higgins. I would love to. These guys aren't even in the conversation, right? They're eliminated from the conversation. So that's where Buffalo has always kind of bargain basement hunted those wide receivers, right? Because what are we going to do? We'll just sign a bunch of guys and then we'll figure it out. That's what they did with Cole Beasley and John Brown, and everybody acted like they were great.
Andy Isabella is still here.
Oh my God. Can you unplug his microphone? Andy Isabella. That's flashbacks from 2001 or 2021, 2020. In any case, corner, wide receiver, defensive end, premium positions, right? The fact that Bean went out and drafted a tight end, that was weird, right? That was weird for Bean because that was not the way that usually goes, right? And when we talk about linebackers, normally you talk about like pass rushing linebackers. You're not talking about like coverage linebackers. That's why Terrell Bernard's a 3rd round pick, 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. He profiles there because he doesn't rush the passer. Right? Pressure is what generates those high picks. And that's what Bean targets in the first 3 rounds. That's all he's interested in. Can I get a tackle? Can I get a defensive end? Can I get a corner? Can I get a wide receiver? Is there a good pass rushing linebacker is like the de facto, right? But that's all you're going to see them go after is tackle, defensive end, corner, wide receiver in the first 3 rounds. That's it. That's all they're interested in. And I understand. I completely understand. So that's why when we talk about defensive tackle, dude, they're not interested.
No.
They're just not interested.
So then they look at the pool and go, well, we can go find a fat guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plug up lanes. Losing every rostered defensive tackle from the end of the season, except for Ed Oliver and Eli Ankou, is rough. Like, that's rough business. Now, maybe Poona Ford can come back on a cheap deal. Maybe. I mean, I don't think he played himself into a payday.
No.
But also, maybe he thinks he needs more usage. Maybe he...
Opportunity, right? It's Buffalo's ripe with opportunity.
Right now,
Sure
here's
is,
a team that knows you and could have you back, but they're not going to pay you a ton. But who else is paying him?
Right. Yeah, exactly. After the year he put up, nobody's going to pay him.
Tim Settle? You want to talk about the year you had? Tim Settle was probably one of the biggest disappointments in free agency.
Forgot he was even on the roster.
Exactly. And then you look at defensive end. Vaughn, Rousseau, Kingsley. That's it. That's what I got.
Yep.
Oh, look. He did us a favor. Here I am looking at my notes.
At that.
Look at this. See, this is what I love about the studio, Paul.
Yeah,
I get monitors to where my own Jamie Vernon just puts up things in front of us.
Yeah, but the depth chart is done. Shaq Lawson's gone. Leonard Floyd's probably gone. AJ Epenesa's likely gone because you're not going to be able to afford to re-sign him. You know?
Nope. Linval Joseph, he's not going to sign with anybody till November again.
Yep.
He's going to do what he did last year. He cherry-picked the team.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Settle wasn't effective. So, I don't know. At defensive end, you're looking at a team where, I don't know, you're probably going to go as far as Rousseau and Von Miller can take you.
I don't knock defensive end out as a end of the first round draft pick.
And this is my point.
Yeah.
This is probably something that doesn't get addressed in free agency.
Well, and it makes the trade of Boogie Basham last year seem silly, right? Doesn't it? Yeah. I don't think they expected AJ Epinesa to absolutely come alive because they had 3 years of a front row seat where he didn't.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't think you planned for that. But what you did by trading Boogie was you traded a guy with a controllable contract for a guy to roster a guy who didn't have that.
And this is where smart GM decisions, where we go, oh, the Brett Veaches and the Bill Belichick's of the world have done this, this, and this. Well, fuck, we may not have one of those either.
Right.
Shit.
Yeah.
We may not have a Tom Brady, we may not have a Bill Belichick, and we may not have a Brett Veach. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, real quick, Bill's history 101, right? So if we just go back to, let's see, let's just start in 2017? That's probably, we'll start I guess the argument is best made 2018. We'll start 2018 because that's really the first draft that matters, right? So since 2018, the Bills have drafted 1, 2, 2.
Yeah, so what are we looking at
3, 4. They've ultimately drafted 4 defensive ends. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So they've drafted 4 defensive ends since Bean has gotten here. Okay.
And one of them was Daryl Johnson.
One of them was Daryl Johnson, who you traded. Boogie Basham, who you traded. Greg Rousseau, who's obviously still here, and AJ Epinesa, whose contract is going to expire. So it is statistically probable you're just as likely to get drafted and traded if you play the defensive end position as you are to see your contract through. Since Bean's arrived, right? Yeah. And at a premium position to only draft 4 players, that says something, right? That says an awful lot about the fact that they feel like they can get end pressure just on the free agent market for a couple $1 million.
And now this is the point I was going to make. This year, the Bills had a better sack total than they've had in a long time. Mm-hmm. Do you know that they didn't have a single player in the top 20 for pass rush win rate?
Mm-hmm. I believe that.
Because they did it in the aggregate.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So again, if you're a champion of this idea of, hey, we can do this cheap, right here is Exhibit B, or maybe C, of like, hey, I don't have to spend a ton on the defensive line to continue getting production.
Right.
Now, we've talked about Epinesa versus the field and how he's probably going to get paid. At least more than what Buffalo's willing to pony up.
Yeah.
We've talked about the secondary situation and how we have safety depth issues. Let's talk about some free agent targets we like. For me, one of the first ones is Darnell Savage. But it comes to mind just because there's so many things that say to me he should. First of all, he's a Packer. A Packer turning Bill, turning free safety that goes bananas has happened already. Like, there's history there that jives. Also, he's going to be a free safety or bust because he has a better than 15% missed tackle rate over his entire career. He has to play the deep half.
Yeah.
You don't want him in the box. He will miss tackles. He will blow some things for you if you try to make him a strong safety. Also, interceptions have dried up a little, but he started strong when he had good play in front of him.
That sounds familiar, huh?
Good linebacker playing everything in front of him where guys are trying to fit things into tight windows. Okay. And then also, elite RAS scores for explosion and speed. He's a physical freak. He just
Bills love that.
needs a little bit of coaching.
Bills love that.
Needs some coaching. Needs a little bit of sandpaper to kind of smooth out those rough edges.
Sound like a used car salesman.
What do you think collections is? It's the inverse of collection or of you selling used cars. Instead of being like, hey, we could put a lot of bad boys, we could put a lot of miles on this bad boy if you just sign the contract. It's you sign the contract, now you better give me those shekels. Now, what I'll say is, he's got all the traits. His value is going to be suppressed by the market. Do you agree or disagree he might be a decent fit?
Athletic profile.
Yeah.
You're willing to bet on the athletic profile.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're the team, there's not a lot of teams who are going to roll heavy money on a player like that.
Right. Agreed.
Jeremy Chin.
Oh, man.
Now, this is if you want to talk about athletic profile, this is the one that gets
Chin's
Bill's
a monster.
This is the one that gets Bill's Mafia, that gets their hackles up. Everybody had a pre-draft crush on Jeremy Chin.
He's such a monster.
You look at it, you had to know that Brandon Beane was probably rubbing his hands going, please, if he just falls far enough.
Yep.
But he didn't.
Right.
It was early second round. He was off the board. Gone.
Yep.
His career has been rocky. So rocky, I'm surprised it didn't come with an 80s fucking montage. Like, he should be training to fight Drago. That's how rocky his career has been. But he's playing for a football team in Carolina that has no coaching staff.
Multiple head coaches at this point.
What I like is that that puts him, the lack of production, plus the athletic profile, puts him in that wheelhouse where you might spend a little bit more than someone might think is reasonable on Jeremy Chin. But if you could craft a 4-year deal and people go, what, you're going to give him a 4-year deal or a 3-year deal so you can spread the hit out? Get us out of this 2-year window that we talked about during the last show?
Right.
He might be able to show you something.
Yeah. I mean, the market on Chin is... Here's the thing about safeties, right? Teams don't want to pay safeties unless your name's Budda Baker. If your name's Budda Baker, you'll make good money. If your name's not Budda Baker, then you're not going to make a lot of money.
I saw multiple safeties now. This is according to Pro Football. This is Spotrac.
Yeah.
And their market analysis. But they're pegging multiple guys over $10 million.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, I understand because, there's a lot of positions available. Understand the algorithm says
yes.
A lot of positions available, not a lot of top level resources for those positions,
yes.
But safeties aren't going to be there's not going to be more than 3 guys making $10 million out of this free agent class per year.
Yeah.
Nah, no way. But I mean, Jeremy Chin, he's looked fine. right? Like,
he's okay.
He's looked fine, but I mean, you're probably looking at $3 million a year.
Well, here's what I love, but this is it. This is your, like, he's the best candidate for a bridge deal.
Yeah.
Or a prove it deal. Like, hey, can I sign you for 2 years, $5 million a piece?
Imagine being 26 years old and being like, oh man, let me just sign a bridge deal somewhere. Oh.
But again, another prolific athletic profile who you look at was drafted to a team, like, I don't know, in the box present at a discount. And he played for a team that everything they've touched has gone to shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird. Carolina's former owner, Jerry Richardson, was forced to sell the team by the same NFL that couldn't offload Dan Snyder. They had to... Chris, you know how many times I've railed about Dan Snyder?
Yeah.
Why couldn't they get rid of Jerry Richardson sooner?
Probably because his racism
trumped
as harsh.
Wait, as harsh. Wait, so Jerry Richardson was racist and sexist and assaulted some in the office females, and this is abhorrent behavior. And yet you watch what Dan Snyder does, and you go, "Wait a minute, we can't get rid of him, but we can crush this guy. We can force him to sell his team." Then they sell it to Tepper, who's a control freak, who tells them to draft a guy over C.J. Stroud.
Throws drinks on people.
Literally can't seal the deal with either of the Carolinas in building a new headquarters, probably because he's an overambitious asshole, but doesn't want to spend any of his own money. I feel bad for that franchise.
I don't.
I do.
I don't.
I do, if only because I know, like, Frank Reich was their first quarterback.
I know. So, and I have a funny story about that. So, back in the 90s, everybody had a television show that was a Bills player, right? Andre Reed had a show. Thurman Thomas had a show. Frank Reich had his own show. So, Frank Reich had a deal where he would go around to local... God, was
this so like podcasting, or was it?
This was a long time ago. This sounds ridiculous. He would go to local supermarkets, the show was in supermarkets, and it was in Super Duper, I believe, or Jubilee, whichever it was at the time.
Oh, no.
So that's where his show was every now and again, right? And they would go to different spots and set up, and people would go, they'd set up chairs, and you'd be in the deli department of Super Duper or whatever.
No.
So in any case, they always had an ask the player segment. Every show did that, right? Where fans could come down and ask questions. So what was I, probably 9? I was probably 9 years old. And Frank was a pending free agent. And I asked him, since Bill Polian is now the general manager of the Carolina Panthers, do you see yourself leaving Buffalo to go to Carolina in his contract year? And he very politely said, you know what? I appreciate the question, but, I'm a Buffalo Bill right now, and we'll see where that goes. And wouldn't you know it, he ends up as... So I just want to point out that I scooped everybody in Western New York in a super duper at the age of like 9.
Because you're the only one who knows what a super duper is.
It was a local supermarket chain. It doesn't matter.
It's just hilarious that franchise has been mired in mediocrity.
Chris Winkie. Hey, don't talk about Chris Winkie, all right? But, it's to get back onto your point of players as far as a profile and love, you're onto what they love. They love the athletic freak, right? They love the guys that bury the RAS scores and blow it off the charts. Like, that's what they love. They'll bet on the athlete 99 times out of 100.
Well, you look at Tremaine Edmonds and Josh Allen. They were banking on these guys are giant bricks of clay that we can mold into the player we want them to be. Now, Jeremy Chin, Darnell Savage, these are guys who did not get coached well.
No. Well, because you're not going to be able to afford Kyle Duggar. Let's just be honest.
And so then you get to shape them to... These are guys who you could get on the cheap and then bring them in and mold them into maybe another... Jordan Poyer and another Micah Hyde, and they've already done this before. They've proven.
different position coach. Joe Dana is now the safeties coach.
Yep.
And not exactly the most prolific history of players that have come
Jalen Petrie
under his coaching. It's short list.
Sure.
Right? Short list. But you also have Bob Babich, who's now your defensive coordinator.
Yes.
And that's where he made his money, was as a safeties coach.
Yes.
And then a linebackers coach, and now your defensive coordinator. And a defensive coordinator who ain't got shit to do.
Who doesn't have anything to do.
He doesn't have
he's not
shit to do.
Because McDermott said during the league meetings when they were talking, when they interviewed him and said, hey, is he going to be calling plays? Like, what is he going to be doing? And he goes, we'll see how that works because there's a lot to learn there. You have to learn the in-game nuances.
Do.
Basically being like, hey, we paid him, we gave him a title, and he's going to keep doing the same thing he's been doing, which is coaching our safeties and linebackers.
Pretty much. And I mean, look at the success you've had at those positions.
Why would you rock the boat?
So I'm going to throw you a curveball. My best free agent fit is Terrell Edmonds.
All right. Edmonds.
The reason is, one, you know how this coaching staff is about culture, right?
He understands. He comes from the family of athletes, the same family Tremaine Edmonds did.
Right, exactly. Fits the athletic profile. You need a safety. He's going to be a $4 million player. Like, he's not going to be a lot of money. And, you know, it's just one of those things where he checks all the boxes that Buffalo would be interested in. And he's going to fit the culture because he just had a brother who I'm sure is saying, I really wish I would have stayed
in Buffalo because Chicago, this is not going.
No.
Aside from the rolling gun battles and everything else that's going on in Chicago, the football is not going well. The position I like the most and that I'm most interested in is how they fix this defensive line because they're going to need talent. And yet they have no money to spend.
Nope, sure don't.
And also they have, look at all that orange up there on the screen.
Yep.
It's embarrassing.
Free agent.
They don't have a starting defense right now.
No.
They don't have a starting front seven.
Nope.
They don't. So with it in mind, I look at a couple guys. The first one is Yetur Gross-Matos.
Okay.
I think Gross-Matos is kind of A.J. Epinesa light, but they have the same career arc. If you look at the way this has gone, strong final month to close 2023. 10 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. Had a real good start to the last season before going on IR. His draft profile makes him sound a lot like Rousseau. And with at least one rookie addition somewhere in the draft, you could sign a guy like this for a few dollars and have a rotation of 4 defensive ends with skill sets that, like, you could draft one guy who's a pure pass rusher and sign a guy like Yetur Gross-Matos and say, now we have a rotation where we have an edge setter on the strong side, a pass rusher on the weak side, and we can rotate those all game long. Am I being crazy here? Or does that not make sense when you figure the guy's probably only going to pull in about what, $4 to $5 million a year?
How is his coaching staff again?
Oh yeah, no, he comes from the Carolina Panthers that we just got done trashing.
Yeah, lovely.
He's had so many coaches in so many years. Like, there's no continuity here.
Right.
He could be the Alex Smith of defensive ends, where you go, look, he didn't have the most defined pass rush moves coming out of college. The idea was he would grow into them. But if you don't have coaching, you just do what you did.
It just doesn't matter.
Come to a team with real coaches. You sign him to a 3-year deal, small money first year, and then you extrapolate it out, but it's still not great. It averages out to about $4 or $5 million a year.
Right.
By year 2 or 3, you're going to see those dividends pay off. And in year 1, you're talking about a player who can at least give you a big body to back up Rousseau.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably dumpster diving a little bit deeper than that, though. Like, I'll be honest with you.
You think so?
Yeah, because they're going to want to have, you know this Bills team, right? This year was really the first year where we saw sort of them hit the brakes a little bit on that defensive end position with the rotation, right? Because Vaughn wasn't in there for the most part. So you saw a lot of Epinesa. You saw a lot of Rousseau. Normally they were guys that they love to run their defensive ends and defensive tackles at 40, 50, 60% snap counts. And this year was a little bit of there were games where that wasn't happening, right? Yeah. On the total, right, the averages are not as high. They're higher than they were, but there were games where there were times that Rousseau felt like he didn't come off the field, right? So I think you're probably dumpster diving for a guy like Bud Dupree. He's 31. He's coming off a 3-year deal with the Falcons, right? Like at this point, just go get the guy with the ball.
I forgot he was in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? Is you're likely trying to get something out of these guys. Cleveland Farrell, like a former. I'll be honest with you guys. Don't fucking laugh at me over there. I say Cleveland Farrell and he laughs at me. The former first-round pick that was Mayock's pick.
Fourth over. That wasn't. No, it was not Mayock's pick. It was John Gruden's pick. Gruden, structurally, it was Gruden's choice.
Are you really going to defend this right now?
No, I'm not defending. I'm just saying.
It sure sounds like you're defending it.
Saying structurally, Gruden had say over the draft over Mayock. I don't know what Mayock was doing with a GM title when you had no voice when it came to the draft.
He was getting beat up by Antonio Brown.
But like Farrell, again, the Bills have a very specific way to go about chasing talent. They trust athletic profile and they love draft pedigree. They will just bring it. Christian Kirksey, he retired because former first round pick. They're like, hey, listen, let's try and run it back. Shane Ray, hey, let's try and run it back.
Yes.
Deron Lee, hey, let's try and capture this first round talent that you had at one point. The Bills do this, and all three of those guys that I just named literally did nothing for you, but it's a trend. So Farrell makes a lot of sense for Buffalo. Yeah. A former first-round pick reclamation project. You're not going to spend anything to get him. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's what your budget says you can afford. So you start looking for guys who blew the RAS score out of the water and are former first-round picks and did dick soup last year in the film room, and those are the guys Buffalo's going to target.
There's one guy, Quentin Jefferson.
Nah.
Q-Jeff! Bring me some Q-Jeff.
I get it.
6 sacks.
Yep.
In a complimentary role for the Jets. Knows the Bills, was on the roster. There's a need at D-tackle. Mm-hmm. If you needed a backup, Jordan Phillips is talking about retiring.
Yep.
And I'm not going to lie to you, Jordan Phillips plays a wild game.
There are times where he's unstoppable and times where he is just 100% nowhere near where he needs to be. When he separated his shoulder diving for a running back 15 yards behind him, I was done with Jordan Phillips.
Well, I look at him and I go, you're a guy who doesn't understand what your job is.
Mm-hmm.
You have all the energy and the excitement. You just don't understand what you're paid to do.
Right.
You're overshooting.
Mm-hmm.
You tried too hard, and then you hurt us and yourself in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at Q-Jeff, 6 sacks as a part of a rotation, which is pretty nice. Now, the question is, can he come back in here and meld as a part of the Bills? Or does he have a bad taste in his mouth? There have been a lot of free agents who have left the Bills who have not. Like they've talked about Quentin Spain. Cole Beasley. Who else? Feliciano, which is the only reason I was happy that 49ers lost the Super Bowl. Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy until he's dead.
So
he sucks, and he never deserved a starting spot in a game like that.
I don't want to defend Quentin Spain, but I'm going to kind of defend Quentin Spain for just a second. Quentin Spain, as you may remember, was not signed to be a starter. He was signed because I can't believe nobody signed Quentin Spain yet.
And then he beat everybody out and got the job.
He was a fucking refrigerator on wheels, right? Like, he was so big. How could you not start that man, right? But then if you take a look at the decisions made around releasing him and why they released him and who they released him for, feels pretty silly now, you know? But not to Quentin Spain was never in their plans, right? When they went through the free agency period, he wasn't in their plans. And at the very end of free agency, they're like, is he going to make our team better? yes, then we just have to sign him. Signing him to the extension, that was the mistake.
That's the mistake. Q Jeff, not great versus the run, but I don't need him to be. I need a pass rush specialist because realistically what you're trying to do is you're trying to rebuild the pass rush through the aggregate and you figure the rest out.
Yeah.
There are going to be, if the Bills execute the draft and execute free agency properly, this team will still be able to score points, which means teams will not be running the ball down our throat because you're probably having to pass. You have to pass. The reality is most teams that play us have to win via the pass. If you're not, it's because we've done something wrong. You saw that at the beginning of this season when the breaking point was that Denver game.
Yeah.
The way that went, we laughed about it at the time, and I still think it was a cop-out because you're the head coach. You own all of your underlings' mistakes. They fired their offensive coordinator because of the way that game ended. But the reality is you lost a sub-20-point game to another team by a field goal at the gun,
that had barely won football games the weeks before.
And so what that tells me is that you guys can't stop the run, but also they're not running the ball. They're throwing the ball. And all of their success was throwing the ball because they knew who you were. They knew your DNA. And when it came down to clutch moments, they threw the ball when it mattered. And so did you. You tried to, but it didn't work. That's how you lost. I think at the end of the day, you have to spend more on the secondary. You're going to have to spend a little bit on the defensive line because there's going to be some veteran backups. There's going to be some guys who come in here. But D tackles are it's like a game of musical chairs. There's 80 guys who have NFL experience and are just looking for a place to go make a paycheck.
Yep.
There's only 20 teams that are hiring.
So I'm gonna give you a challenge because I know you're a stat guy, and I don't think you've had enough to drink to forget that I'm going to challenge you with this.
It's all right.
I may be wrong about that.
You might be.
So I want you to go back into history and look at Sean McDermott as a head coach and his record against coaches who have made a Super Bowl appearance. And I think you will find a very disturbing trend.
What I do know is that Sean McDermott does not do well against coaches who have done well.
Well, you bring up the Broncos game with Sean Payton, right? Yeah. And then you look at the Chiefs. It's not hard to do the math here, right?
He does not do...
Right.
His coaching does not do well against great head coaches. So what you have to have is better talent. And unfortunately, we don't have the money to afford great talent.
This year definitely poses a problem for that, doesn't it?
Exactly, which is why, as we talked about in the last show, I'd love to see him burn it and just let's start fresh.
I think the difference between a coach like Andy Reid, who's been doing it for 30 years, right, versus Sean McDermott is Andy Reid's so long in the tooth, he doesn't necessarily require the perspective of his coordinators.
Yep.
He knows how to spend his time effectively. McDermott has never leveraged his coordinators, and I think that's a fatal flaw.
Well, you look at his coordinators right now; they're all
kids. They're all kids. Yeah,
and they always have been. He had one tenured offensive coordinator. One. Well, I guess two. Dable. And
I can't count. He was the offensive coordinator for the Browns. He was not tenured just because he did the job before.
And the Chiefs. He's the only guy to ever get Brady quinned twice in one career.
Yeah.
That's
a great point. That's a great point. But again, Leslie Frazier was the sole voice of reason. And then, you walked away from that because you couldn't handle constructive criticism. Most likely. That's speculation. Likely couldn't handle constructive criticism. But, I think you go back and you look at that. The talk of Sean McDermott being a top 5 coach in the NFL, I think quickly disintegrates when you look at his record against coaches who have made Super Bowl appearances.
The guys who matter are decisive, they're resolute, they know what they want, they have a design.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can get to that place.
Right. Yep.
And I'm hoping that this offseason shows us they have a plan.
Yeah.
So regardless of where they choose to spend their money, I'm hoping that what we see is a plan.
Yep.
That they go, hey, we're not just going to windmill and just pick up scrap players at the end of the year and insert them as starters because, oh my God, he's suddenly better than our starter and we panic. We have a plan.
Yep.
We've thought about this. We've had conversations about how to approach the defense, specifically the defense, because our head coach oversees it. He has so many hands in that pot. I need to know that this is going to go off without a hitch.
Right.
Because if we go into another year where things don't get orchestrated properly, like this is a thing where we were already calling for his head when he lost to the Broncos.
Yeah.
We were already calling for his head when he lost to the Bengals. We were making the point that he's John Fox. He's the guy who can get you so far, but he will fail in high-pressure moments. And he does it again, and everyone puts their hands up and goes, well, we'll have next year. What is next year going to look like? Is it going to be better?
Next year's tough, right? I will say that, Kansas City exploited a very, 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 very disintegrated defense. With that being said, Kansas City had 5 third down attempts that whole game.
Bang. You never got them to third down.
No.
So
how can you win that football game? The fact that it was even close.
You didn't play Kyrie Elam, but you put a gimpy Rasul Douglas out there.
Yep.
This is a coach making decisions that don't make sense.
Well, and Kyrie...
You have to hope your talent can overcome your coaching.
Yeah. Final point on Kyrie Elam for me. Kyrie Elam, drafted out of the SEC. Cornerbacks coach. Former cornerbacks coach for...
Florida.
I think that's almost. Almost. Well, Kyrie Elam went to Florida, right? Former cornerbacks coach for the Hurricanes. So, and had been there, right? So if you're going to get a guy that believes in Kyrie Elam, it's the guy that's just coming out of college. This is his first professional gig, right? He spent his career in college coaching SEC corners, right? Like coaching guys at that talent level. Kyrie Elam, if this organization, they need him to hit, they brought in a cornerbacks coach that can talk his language. And if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does.
And that's it. Can we empower him? Because honestly, we talk about how cash-strapped the Bills are.
Yep. Talent through the roof. Kyrie Elam has talent through the roof. But
can you harness it?
It's
Can you make it work for you?
Right.
Now, that, Hamlin, you look at all the changes in the safety coaching and all this stuff. They know they need something different.
Yeah.
Will it work? Because I think that more so than any of the money they spend in free agency, like, I'm sorry I brought you in on the defensive show for free agency, but ultimately the coaching is going to matter more than anything they can spend.
Yep.
They need to be able to coach up the players they have and then also rely on a bunch of cheap players who just have a freak upside athletically that haven't had anything for a career.
Yeah, you just need to pray that you don't get decimated by injuries like the last 2 seasons. And you're going to.
You will.
Yeah.
That's
it's almost
football.
a guarantee.
That's football.
Right.
It's a game what do they call it?
It's a game of attrition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the attrition season long, like this is why you do this though. Because the signing that you make at the end of the season where you go, oh, I'm going to make that guy, I'll sign a safety for $1 million. I'll bring in, like I said, when we signed Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer to mediocre contracts, we had no idea what they would become.
Nope.
But we had good coaching.
You signed Poyer and Hyde the same way that you signed Sherfield and Hardy. You signed guys who you thought you could make into something. The difference is you hit there, and you got franchise pieces.
Yeah.
But Poyer and Hyde have been franchise pieces. Buffalo has really struggled to do that, right? Like if you look at that free agent market, are we going to call who was the tackle a couple seasons ago that they signed from Carolina? Daryl. what was his name? He played right tackle for Buffalo. He was
Darrell Williams.
Darrell Williams. Yeah, Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer are probably the Reclamation Project success stories. And I don't know if you have any more than that.
Well, they have to build on that if we're going to go anywhere this year.
I know.
But also, eat that dead money. Take this year, make the coaching staff prove that they're worth their titles. Let's have it. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the opportunity for adversity. You should be. If you're like, I'm sorry. I just what I do professionally and what just the way I'm wired, I want that. Show me something that's hard, and I'll show you how I overcome it.
So
I need our coaching staff to have that mindset this year, or else they're not worth a shit.
I'm going to bring one point to a close on this topic, right?
Well, we're going to round out the show here. So what's your
Perfect.
final point?
So everybody's really excited about the Bills having 10 draft picks. Something that's a dynamic that I don't know if a lot of people are recognizing is the Bills, being an organization that's turned out a lot of success recently, get poached very quickly when it comes to players. So unless these players are going to make your 53-man roster, you have no business drafting them. Don't even bother, right? Because Alex Austin, 7th round pick, he's now a restricted free agent with the Patriots, I believe.
Picked off Josh Allen, actually.
Yep, that's right. Luke Tenuta, not on the team. Marquez Stevenson, gone. DeMar Hamlin is likely going to be gone, or he's going to be starting for you. God, what a paradox. Rashad Wildgoose, gone. Jack Anderson, gone. Isaiah Hodges, gone. Like, you can't draft guys that you're not going to roster because they don't slip by anymore. This isn't 1998. This isn't 2006 where you can draft guys and then develop them. That doesn't work. You draft the guys that you're going to play because you can't hide players anymore. People know Buffalo and they know that you have a pretty good eye for talent. And if you're not going to take them, they will. So this whole having 10 draft picks thing, dude, get me 6. Give me 6 draft picks. Don't draft 10 guys that I get to watch go on to the waiver wire and get picked up by Carolina and get picked up by Arizona and get picked up by these
and
other
they
teams.
do fuck all with them, but it doesn't matter because they stole a player off your roster.
You lost a resource.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Final point on that. Buffalo, you got 10 draft picks. They better all play for you. Otherwise, don't draft them. Don't waste the resource.
Final question. Would you be shocked if it's a defensive heavy draft?
That's Sean McDermott, man. I'd never be shocked by that. Come on now, Drew.
Chris, I feel like we've talked this thing to death.
Yeah, we're almost at 2 hour and a half.
There we go.
Hour and a half?
Good Lord. We got to get out of here. Guys, I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. That's... What's his face?
Thanks, Drew. Fuck.
I was going to say, Paul said something so funny. When Chris goes, hey, there's cans under the table if you want to put some headphones on. He goes, I got to hide these ears somehow. It was one of the funniest things. Guys, this has been great, but we got to get out of here. This has been your Rock Pile Report.